What's up, you guys? So, if you know me, you know that I love taking care of aquariums. I've got quite a few aquariums myself, but throughout my entire time in the hobby, I have never had more than a 2D background. Now you can see this background on here is two-dimensional. It's just a poster that has been attached with some oil that kind of sticks it to the glass, and it makes for a cool little view, but there's a level up from that, and I've never made the jump to get a 3D background because they are so expensive. But I recently found out that you can actually make them yourself out of Styrofoam. So I've got myself quite a bit of Styrofoam, and I'm gonna go ahead, test my artistic skills and see if I can replicate nature using a synthetic material. And I have recently acquired this 55-gallon right here. It's a beautiful aquarium, and it was super cheap, and all I've got inside of it at the moment are just substrate and plants. So I've really got nothing to lose if I'm gonna go ahead and give it a go. Let's get right to it.
So what I'm gonna go ahead and do first is just measure out the sheets of Styrofoam and cutting them down to size to ensure that they will fit into my aquarium. Now the way my aquarium is built, it's got a support in the center of it, so I had to cut it into 3 separate pieces so that I could fit it into the aquarium. And here I've got a hot knife. This is meant for cutting Styrofoam, makes the whole process a lot easier. And in order to attach the pieces together, I'm going to be using aquarium safe silicone and toothpicks to secure it. So I am first just attaching 2 sheets of Styrofoam together so that I can cut into them and make little details. And now I am cutting little pieces off to attach to the main piece of Styrofoam. And this is just going to give it a bit of depth, and I can carve this and make it look a little more realistic. And the toothpicks are used here to secure the silicone until it dries, and once it dries I can go ahead and pull them out.
Alright guys, you can kind of see it's starting to take shape. I'm looking to make a rock face similar to that one right there. And you can see all the little cracks and crevices. I'm gonna add detail once I get done with it. But I'm gonna go ahead and do a rock face here, bit of rock on each side here, and then I'd like to do a tree trunk down the middle with like roots coming out. And then over here, I'm going to have it turn 90 degrees to fill up the corner, maybe put another tree trunk here or a branch or something. So I'm making the tree trunk here, and as you can see, it consists of a few different layers, and all I do to do that is take the previous layer and trace along at an angle so that the next one is going to be smaller than the previous. Lay it down and you can see it lines up pretty well.
And here I've got a hole in the top of the Styrofoam that leads through to the front, and that is for the intake on the filter.
Here's what I've got so far. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm aiming towards. So now I'm just gonna take some of the scraps that are here and there and glue them onto pieces that they look like they would fit upon in order to add a bit of depth. And then once I'm done doing that, I can carve some detail into them to make it look a little more normal.
I'm now adding the 3rd layer of Styrofoam on and using the side of the hot knife to give it some texture. Now, just as a disclaimer, if you're using a hot knife, make sure that the room that you're in is very well aired out, or that you're doing it outside, because you don't want to breathe in that melted Styrofoam fumes.
Alright you guys, so I have about completed the back wall. There's the tree and the rocks. I still have to put details into the tree, but I'll get to that later. And then I've got this last panel here, and what I want to do is kind of have an L shape, and we'll slide that in right there, and that should fit snugly, hopefully. And then in the corner here, I want to have something like this with the tree roots growing out of the rocks. Just have like a little pile of rocks in the corner, and then the tree trunk coming down, and then we should be good to go ahead and paint it with the Drylok. So now I've got several pieces connected, going each different way as you can see, and then I will just carve it in a quarter circle little shape right there to make the tree trunk. Alright guys, this is where we are at the moment. I've got the tree trunks done and all of the panels. I've
decided to have it touching on each of the other sides as well. And now it's time to go ahead and paint it with some Drylok. And now time for the waterproofing stage. So what we're going to do to ensure that the styrofoam doesn't leach any chemicals into the water and to ensure that it can stay watertight, we're going to add a Masonry Sealer called Drylok. Now this stuff is aquarium safe from what I've read. Once it cures, which you want to give it about 3 days to cure completely, then it won't leach anything into the water and it should be good to go. So we're going to do 2 to 3 layers on this thing. So first we're going to just do a plain white coat, and then after that dries you should give it at least an hour to dry, and then you can add another coat. Once we get to the final layer, then we can go ahead and start adding details. So for the first layer we'll probably just do a plain white coat, and then the second one we can do the base colors, and then for the last one we can go ahead and add a bit of detail and then give it its 3 days to cure, and then we can silicone it into the tank and it should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and get this little process started. So it's been about 24 hours now, but this is what it's looking like now. We have got the first layer of Drylok on, and that has sealed most everything, assuming that I covered all the little gaps and everything. Now for the second coat, we're going to put in some color. This is just concrete colorer, which once the stuff is mixed in with the Drylok and it cures, it will not leach into the water, so it is an aquarium safe paint. Now the cool thing about having these colors and the Drylok being white is that if you want a lighter shade, you just add less of the color. You want a darker shade, you add more of the color. Now the color that I'm shooting for is this. So we're going to first add a darker layer, this type of color, all the way across. And then once that dries, you can add maybe a lighter gray to certain surfaces and add a bit of detail for that third layer. I have used 1 quart of Drylok so far, so hopefully the second one will last me through the second layer and details. It's been about 4 hours and I've got the rocks painted. I did an initial layer and then went back and touched it up because this stuff is so porous it's really hard to get every little nook and cranny the first time around. And I'm going to go ahead and head to bed because it is quite late. But yeah, see you guys tomorrow. Kind of darkens up once it dries. That one's dried up now. This one's still damp. And what I'm going to do next is go ahead and mix up some darker brown and even maybe some black, and go ahead and start painting along little cracks, fill in some detail along the trees. Well, you guys, I think the secret to doing realistic looking stuff is just to use a bunch of different colors. I know I used this normal brown to kind of do the base coat, and then I used a dark brown for the little stripes. I went and colored in all these little stripes and holes and everything. Alrighty guys, it's been nearly a week since I've started this project, and today I finally got in all the fine details and everything, and I think we're pretty much done. I'm going to leave it to cure for about 3 days, and then it should be entirely dry. Then we can go ahead and silicone it into the aquarium. Hopefully my measurements were right and it fits properly. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it so far, so we'll just give it some time. And now I'm just draining the tank so that I can silicone the background in. I'm going to go ahead and scoop away all of the substrate so I can get it down fairly deep and then move the substrate back. And I'm going to wipe down once with just a normal cloth and once with rubbing alcohol so that it will dry up any water that's on the surface and make for the best possible seal with the silicone. In the end, I really like how this ended up turning out, and as you allow for plants and algae to grow, it'll make for an even more realistic looking background. But we're gonna save that for another video.